What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dan Mabry Project. This episode is with Vanelis Rivera. Vanelis is someone who I have just recently come into contact with, I guess, in the past couple months, really through doing this podcast. And we talk about that at the beginning, but I really respect where she comes from and her opinion on certain issues. And we get a little political with this episode. So be warned, but it was all peaceful and it was really, we talk about it. It comes from curiosity, from me being curious as to her perspective on things and where she comes from and, how she has formulated her opinion on things. And I think nobody's really right or wrong when it comes to political issues. I don't know. I think everybody has a different perspective on life, and I tend to get funneled into one perspective, and I think we all can sometimes. So it's always good to hear from other people's perspectives. So we had a lot of fun, though. We really cut up here and got to know each other pretty well. Vanelis is doing a lot and has done a lot, and we kind of I pick her brain about certain stories that I knew were going on for her, and we just had a really good time, and I really appreciate her coming on and willingness to share and be super open. And like I told her at the end, I think this is the beginning of a very good friendship. So I look forward to hanging out with her in the future and bringing her on the podcast for sure. I definitely think she has more opinions that I would like to know. And we talked for another like 30, 45 minutes after we quit filming. So just really enjoyed her and look forward to what she has coming in the future. We mentioned in this podcast on Saturdays, our friend Asia Jordan, friend of the podcast, previous guest, does yoga every Saturday at 10 a.m. So go check that out. I always have stickers, and I would really, I need your subscription. I need your subscription to this podcast. I think we're at like 165 on YouTube. Trying to get to 1,000. That'll help me monetize this channel via YouTube and help me get into the algorithm. If you enjoy this podcast, got plenty more to check out if you'd like to. We are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you don't want to sit here on YouTube the whole podcast. But follow me on Instagram at Dan.Mabry. Hit me up. I'm always looking for criticism and guest suggestions. So, without further ado, Vanelis Rivera. I'm just going to end it like that because that's the way it is. It's raw and weird. Peace. We'll get into it. All right. So, Vanelis Rivera,
C.
aka Van.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna start a podcast called Dan and Van.
Oh my gosh, that would be awesome.
Oddly enough, I have had this idea of living in a van for a while, and I was gonna start. My Instagram name was gonna be Dan in a Van. That could be a little weird. Right, yeah, for sure. I'm glad that went over well because I've been thinking about that stupid joke all day. So, but anyway,
icebreaker.
Yeah, for sure. That was the goal. I think Van started following me on Instagram maybe after Killian's podcast, and at the time I was just like, okay, here's a girl from Monroe who started following me on Instagram. What's up with her? And it really didn't go beyond that. And then we had Kendrick's workshop, yeah. And that was whenever you stood up and said who you were and where you're from, and And I was like, okay, all right, like, what's up with this girl? And then we had an icebreaker event, and I literally stood up and went right to her. We met eyes, and I walked right up to her and was like, hey, I'm Dan. You follow me on Instagram? And that threw her for a loop for a second, and then we made the connection. But yeah, since then we kind of follow you on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot, and you post some of your ideas, and I guess I didn't realize to the extent of what you do with Bayou Life, and then I found your TED Talk, and I realized that you're like a full-blown professor, and I'm like, I'm like still 12 years old in my brain, so I'm like,
I mean,
oh my
I am
gosh.
too sometimes.
Here's someone I know who's actually teaching English at a collegiate level, and
I mean,
that always I'm terrible at that kind of thing. So, but yeah, if you could just tell the people who you are and where you're from, where you come from.
Well, I was born in Puerto Rico, specifically in Arecibo, which is the north coastal part of the island, but I was raised in the U.S. Virgin Islands, specifically the island of St. Croix, because my mom moved there to teach, and that's where she met my dad, and then conception.
Yeah.
And so I've been there, and I really love St. Croix, and I miss it a lot. How did I get here?
Yeah, that is like I always, like, okay, you run into people at like. I live in Ruston, and so Ruston's a small town, and I run into people who are from, like, live in Ruston, and like, where are you from? And like, they're like, Pennsylvania or New York or whatever. I'm like, why are you here? Like, why would you be here?
Well, the university brings a lot of people here.
No doubt.
It didn't bring me here initially. Honestly, it's such a boring, basic story. It's, I followed a boyfriend here who's also from the Virgin Islands.
Okay.
And he was going to school in Florida, and he didn't like it, so he just opened one of those college books that you look for your major. Or universities based on your major, and so he found something that was close to home. We call it close to home because it's like, 2-hour plane ride.
Okay.
So Caribbean people like to usually stay like in Florida, really mostly.
Right.
So we were dating, and then I came to visit. And then just, for shits and giggles, I'm like, let me take a tour in the English department at ULM. And they told me that I had a good chance to get an assistantship. And that was kind of like their selling point for me.
So you had been in the States previously to that?
Louisiana was my first experience living in the United States.
Yeah.
I had visited, for like vacation for like maybe 3 or 4 days a week.
So the majority of your education was in the Virgin Islands?
All of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, except for college where I went to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
But the Caribbean was my full like education.
Yeah. That's got to be a really unique place to grow up.
It really is.
And like,
it's fantastic. I mean, I guess I lucked out in a way.
I can only imagine, like, you probably grew up with a small community and like a lot of the same people.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like, Monroe is a small community in many ways. It's a little town and country, as they say. So both of the islands I grew up in kind of are similar in that sense because it's not like huge city. Well, Puerto Rico, the city there it's pretty large, but at least in Croix you get a little bit of both worlds. And, so coming to Monroe wasn't strange in that sense. I mean, it was strange in a gazillion other ways.
No doubt.
It's just weird.
So I guess when did you decide to pursue English? Was that in your collegiate
days?
When
I was in undergrad in Puerto Rico, I was actually chemistry track, and I don't know, I guess I wasn't really like feeling it in terms of like what I was doing on a daily, because I was in lab and I love science, but I'm not I can't stay indoors too long. So I was inspired by a Spanish teacher. She was teaching Spanish lit. Well, she was teaching the equivalent of what is English comp.
Okay.
So she was teaching the Spanish version of that. And, man, I just would leave that class so inspired in terms of my thinking. I was like thinking about a whole bunch of different things. And I just thought, man, what I want to do for a living is make people feel the way I feel in this class. And so that's kind of what, almost like the same week, I just changed majors.
Wow.
And then here I am.
I guess, can you comment on like the like college in Puerto Rico compared to like college in Louisiana? Now that you kind of
That's a great question, and you know, I don't think I've ever gotten asked that question before. What comes to mind is that it was the college I went to. There were two like standout universities in Puerto Rico. It was like the Puerto Rico system, kind of like ULM is the Louisiana system. And there are two standout universities. There's the one in San Juan, which is a city, and it's called Rio Piedras. And they're like super artsy, super they're the ones that start all the strikes, and they're just really like kind of rebellious in culturally speaking, and you know, as university or college students.
Yeah.
Mine is like in the west coast of the island, super more chill. It's not a huge city. And it's known as more like it's for engineers. Like that's what it's like known for. So English there or any of the arts system there is not like going to be like in the other one, which is like really driven. But even then, there's like this social consciousness that kind of permeates students, like at a whole bunch of different levels. Like people still wanted to do like a lot of artsy stuff, and it was a huge party college. Like the stories I could never say. My God. I almost, like, I was visiting mom, and I almost asked her this, and I was afraid of the answer, but I probably know the answer. I was gonna ask her, like, Mom, do you really want to know, like, all the crazy shit I did?
Yeah.
That you never, like, that you don't know, but that now it's okay because I'm still alive,
yeah.
And I haven't murdered anybody. And I didn't ask her, but I kind of really wanted to be like, do you want to know all the stories? Let's have fun girls' night.
I don't think I'll ever go into specifics with my parents.
I almost wanted to, and then I thought, no, that's too crazy. So, but all that to say, so there's like this huge, it's very energetic, highly energetic, very, it's an old university. It has a lot of history. So the, how do you call it? Campus pride. Oh my gosh, it's so like very palpable. Those are the ways that I kind of like coming here to ULM. It was just really subdued in so many ways. When I got here, I was like, so where are all the student groups and this and that? And granted, ULM when did I get here? 2008 is nothing like it is now.
So you're like referring to like the passion for the university that the students have?
The university, which some students now, like, I mean, I think it's really grown since 2008 that I can recall. And it's different for me because when I came to ULM, I was a grad student. So my involvement wasn't like that of an undergrad. So that's also probably different.
Right.
But even when I started teaching in 2011, I also noticed that because I was teaching undergrads and I heard their perspectives, and you know, a lot of students that do really care for ULM still get upset when students wear LSU shirts and don't seem to really be putting ULM first, and I get that, you know, but I
take a real offense to that as well. I went to school 30 minutes down the road at Louisiana Tech, but like, I guess part of it is, like, a lot of my family went to that university, and like I've always been a fan of the university, right. And like it's an old line that a lot of Tech fans throw out that if you see someone wearing a Louisiana Tech shirt, they probably went to Louisiana Tech. If you see someone wearing an LSU shirt, they probably went to Walmart.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I'm sorry.
It is. I do get it. You know, and I get that even if you haven't gone to LSU, being from Louisiana, I would imagine that you have a pride in what LSU has.
Yeah.
You've been successful in, and that it's due the celebration for that.
But yeah, I mean, I get it too. It's
yeah,
just,
but it was like all about Mayaguez, which is where I went. Mayaguez and like the Rome, that's what, like the shortened version of it, and all about the mascot. I mean, it was just like massive. And then it was very, everybody was really socially aware in very many ways. I think I can recall at least like 3 student strikes while we were there.
Wow.
Because of tuition hikes. I don't think that ever has been considered.
No.
I don't even know if in their history of ULM there has been a student strike. I want to find that information. If anybody knows, send it my way because I really would love to know. So things like that, I was just, like that's so weird that nobody is like has that, like, I don't know, passion for
school pride.
And so yeah, that was a bit different. That was
I see what you're talking about though, because same thing. I mean, I see a similar problem at Tech. Like they called it like
you're fine. Do you want to? Hey, Rebecca, shouting out Rebecca, my new colleague.
It's almost like a weekend school. Like like on the weekends everybody goes home. That was.
But in Mayaguez, that was the case too.
Okay.
Like a lot of people would go home. But like I said, we were the Puerto Rico university system. There are tons of campuses.
Okay.
So that might be different because Louisiana only has two.
Right.
Two that I know of, and there might be some other like attached. Like I think NOLA has, New Orleans has, universities attached to the Louisiana system. But like at least it's just Lafayette and Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
But even to me, like social awareness of events that have to do with, government and politics. I mean, they were so political.
Okay.
Hugely political, but in a way that I think was different than American politics. And even now that you can see that with what happened in Puerto Rico with the people making the governor resign.
Right.
And it's just like, that was one march.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Huge march. And like, I think 1 or 2 days later, he said he'd resigned. And it's just like, I don't see Americans really doing that.
I mean, it's odd that we can compare these directly, almost, in Venezuela and Puerto Rico, in that sense of like a lot of people, saying the government is messed up, and Venezuela kind of staying the same, and Puerto Rico making changes.
And I think there are different ways to go about it. Latin America, from my understanding, has always been known to just manifest. And I think America as well. Like, a lot of the changes that have happened in this country have been because people have, like, gotten together and manifested. And, I mean, screw it. So when Trump got elected, there was, like, a backlash with the Women's March, which I did attend one in Austin, so that's where I'm at. Bye. So that was like a form of that, but the manifestation wasn't to call for resignation.
Right.
So it was the manifestation. It seemed to be more like, here are all the numbers of people that don't agree with your politics or your social ideas, versus the march in Puerto Rico was like, you need to resign. Like yesterday.
And I think, and this is just purely from my perspective, like the Women's March, it definitely it opened up my eyes to like start thinking, like making the effort to like, just be more respectful of anyone that you meet on the street, and just like, I don't know, it's starting the conversation of the equal wages and all, just more rights for everything. I don't know. And then of course all the abortion stuff that's come on recently, and it's a wild ride.
It has been a really wild ride.
Yeah,
it really has.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll just jump into it, I guess. It was a little early
on,
but we'll go for it. So the other day, Vanelis posted something on Facebook, and it was about. She said that her mother had encouraged her to go and get her birth certificate because she was afraid of the ICE raids and things like that. And I think that Vanelis, being from where she is and raised in the way that she was, and being the person that she is, like, she has an incredible perspective on all of that, because she is a person of color, if you will, and she looks like she could possibly be from Mexico or and came across illegally, but that is not who she is. She is born in a U.S. territory, and she is a U.S.
I'm glad
citizen.
You know that it's a U.S. territory, because a lot of people ask me like, so how long have you had your green card? And it's like, that doesn't,
since birth.
Since birth.
Yes. But I guess can you talk about like what went through your mind whenever your mom told you to do that, and maybe just some perspective from your side?
So the way that it happened, and mom and I are really similar. So like when I was having a reaction to mom watches the news, so she had the news on, and they were headlining the ICE raid on those. I think they were chicken factories or
Mississippi or something.
Yeah, in Mississippi, close to Jackson, and they were headlining, you know, the kids that were left behind, like in daycare and in school, and this little girl was on, and I was just like, what the fucking shit is this?
Yeah.
Like, what? And so I hadn't, that was the first time I had heard, and I think it just happened like the day before or something. I was like, I was so pissed off. And then my brother lives in Jackson. So when mom started paying attention, she's like, and this is, I think this is any mom in the world, but Latinx moms are really known for just, "Ay, Dios mío," and "Ay, Osvaldo," and my brother's name is Osvaldo. Shout out Oz, be embarrassed. And she's just thinking of him, and then of course she's thinking of me. She's like, in Louisiana, this and that, and then so she was just like, "Do you need a copy of your birth certificate?" And in a way, and I was about to be like, "Mom, just calm," because we tell her that like 24/7.
Yeah,
calm down.
Yeah.
But for some reason this time I'm like, do I really actually thought that I might need one.
Yeah.
And honestly, and I told her this about my brother, is like this pasty Puerto Rican, and he knows it. I know it. The world knows it now. So I don't think that somebody would look at him and be like, "Look at that brown boy. He's like pasty." But, you know, I'm out in the sun. I tan real well. So I was just like, maybe I should. And then I sometimes speak Spanish with like people here or even friends.
Yeah.
So the scenarios in my mind were like, somebody could just be like, she's speaking Spanish, ergo.
Right.
So she called the I don't know which office, the voters registration office. She went there and got them that same day.
Wow.
And I have it now. And a couple of my friends on Facebook have been really like awesome about informing me of things. Like apparently Louisiana allows you to put your birth certificate and print it in your license card. So I'm going to look into that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then another friend of mine, my colleague Meredith, she sent me a Facebook post of another person who is saying, you know, yeah, I'm a U.S. citizen, but I got stopped in New York. And, you know, Meredith, what she meant to send me that with was to tell me, hey, your mom's not really actually that crazy, because people do stop anybody. And the thing with ICE raids is they don't ask questions. They're just like, everybody in.
Yeah.
Go to this facility that usually you don't get a phone call. You don't really have any rights, you know, and they're not checking if you're American citizen or if you have all your documentation right away. You get processed. And then sometimes that takes time. And then sometimes you don't get a phone call. Like NPR just posted an article about that same issue of people of ICE taking people, and then the processing takes so long that they don't get to like contact people immediately. And honestly, it's kind of like inspiring me to find out more information about like, should I just go to these detention centers and help people get in communication with family members?
Yeah.
Because that is one of the most harrowing things, is not to be able to contact family. It just was really infuriating, because it's just not the way to handle something like that.
A human.
It's a human who is in their most, and not all of them are necessarily illegals. Most of them do have a form of paperwork or is just about to get expired. You know, it's not the case most of the time, but these are people who, out of desperation, went on this like harrowing journey to a place that they don't know, to be able to like become financially stable for themselves and their families, and then we're gonna like spit in their face.
Yeah,
it's just disgusting.
Yeah,
you know, it's just, I can't even really think about like it too much, because it really puts me in a place of like, is this what we're doing now? You know, the country that really was born from that same kind of spirit of let's seek better.
Right.
But now we're the assholes. Okay, King George, where you at?
You know, I don't know. It's something that I go back and forth on a lot, and it's also something that I realize that I can't even think about. Like, I can't put myself in those people's shoes about being born in a country that is in a bad spot, or they get, they're fear for their lives, or their husband's abusive, or whatever the case may be, and they feel that they need to leave that place and go on this like you say, incredible journey, and oftentimes brutal on themselves and their family. But it's just what pulls on me is like, they put in this rule about you had to apply for asylum in the first country that you went through.
Yeah.
And that's weird too, because it's like the part of me is like, yeah, you went through all these countries, but I understand like America is the promised land and everyone wants to come here because they feel that they can make a better life for themselves. And it's always something that pulls me from each side of it, in the side that I absolutely care for human beings and their well-being, and I don't wish mistreatment upon anyone in any sense, but it's like, why didn't you try to make a life and in the next stop? And that's I guess that's my fight against it, if you will. It's not really a fight, but
and I'm not speaking again. Like, I'm not saying I understand the laws for people coming into the country, and I understand why they would be significant.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm not really saying that I don't agree with having immigration laws and policies.
Right.
I'm saying that when we do have to monitor undocumented people that come in, it's how we're doing it that I have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Treating people like they're not people. Like, when people, but they're criminals, it's like, but really? But are they?
Yeah.
Like, what really? Let's let's go back to what we really conceive of as criminals. And I mean, yesterday I was in traffic court. And it was the weirdest. It's my second time in traffic court. It was the most harrowing experience, and I think it was harrowing because I had been so fired up about like the whole like undocumented workers and how people have been talking about them. Like, I can't even look at the comments that people write when, like, even I don't know if it was KNOE or my ARC Limits.
Oh God, those are the worst.
Yeah. Like, I think one of the articles that they shared was about the children, and I just read one fucking and I was just like, these are just fucking children, man. Just lay off the kids. Like, what the hell? Like, it just missing the whole point. But so I'm in freaking traffic court. I'm gonna go pay because I have the money to pay, and I'm in there with like 10 people, and they're all African American. And if you don't have the money to pay, you're going to jail. And they were like, if you don't have the money right now, you use that phone and call somebody. And some people did, and some people didn't have any money or knew of somebody to call who had money. And I'm just thinking, and I had to stay there all day because they left my folder in the courtroom. So I was there for 3 hours when I could have just left in like 30 minutes. I was there for 3 hours witnessing people in their lowest point because they didn't have money. And granted, and I'm familiar, I talked to my lawyer and got information about it. And, granted, some of those people are not just there for traffic tickets, but, there might be some light battery charges. It could be like disorderly conduct. It could be theft as well. So I don't know what those people are in there for.
Yeah.
But to see in the faces of another human being just like complete like hopelessness for 3 hours.
It's pretty disheartening.
It just felt like we're putting it felt like a war on poor people. That's what it felt like. That's what it looked like. And we talk about law and we talk about who is a criminal, what is a criminal. I'm just like, I just don't believe the law is that nothing is etched in stone. It's, if that's the case, then we're missing the whole human element of it.
Yeah.
And we're raising laws like they're godly, and just other people wrote it. So it ain't that godly.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not. Law is made by man. So it's something that should evolve and, hopefully evolve. And I think the human element sometimes gets missed so many times. And one of the things that, you asked me earlier about what was different from, being here at the university and then Puerto Rico. And it's like, from my experience in Puerto Rico, a lot of, especially young students, are just really fired up about life and what they want to do with their lives, and just starting to get really socially active. I didn't really hear the phrase, "it's just the way it is." I heard that tons here. And it was just like, what? One of my first, like, racially driven experiences here, I asked my friend, I was like, was that strange? And they're like, yeah, this is the way it is. And I'm like, but it shouldn't. But they're like, no, that's just the South. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to ever get to a place where I'm like, that's just the way it is. If I say it, it's because I want to change it, or I want to bring awareness to it, not just to throw my hands up. And I hadn't been very socially minded for a while, and I'm just now realizing, man, where was I? Like, yeah. I'm just waking up too, in a way. And I don't really want to go back to that place of just like, meh, well,
The worst phrase in business. We've always done it this way.
Exactly. It's just like, how are we missing that we are like changing tides? Like, how is that something?
But I mean, I can only imagine what your experience was like, and especially knowing the fine people of Monroe, and especially the some of the white folks that live on the far east side of Monroe. Definitely have certain opinions of people.
I think it's like, my experience really has been Americans, and I've met the most incredible people here. Like, oh my, Southern hospitality is a thing. I'm admitting it. Nothing that I ever really like doubted. It's just been, people here have been, since I was here in grad school, just like, they knew I was away from home, and they're like, come here, come to Thanksgiving dinner, and just to come to dinner or come hang out. I was just like, amazing. So it's not so much, I think that there's just this lack of being educated about other cultures in the education system itself. And that kind of exists in a lot of places. So I'm not really just pinpointing Louisiana per se. I mean, there are just some places that don't hit hard on geography, or like on diversity of culture, and just like learning about that. I didn't grow up that way. I grew up like with a heavy geography based classes, exploring different cultures. And even then, sometimes I put my foot in my mouth, So I think it's really about how to approach the other. And what I don't understand about some Americans is that feeling threatened by people with different ideas, or that dress differently, or, or that eat different foods, or I don't understand the fear or the anger or hatred toward that. Like, that I can't really get. And yeah. I've seen it. Like, students have made comments, not to me, but just of other cultures. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? And why is that so distasteful to you? It's just a different, like, somebody in the world looks at like how you dress, and I'm like, man, that's weird as hell. That person looks like a clown. It's just like, it's a weird thing that we can really only say in our own bubble. And maybe it's very human.
I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with the history of where this place comes from, and obviously slavery and all of those things that came along with that, and Civil War. I mean, I'm talking all the way back to that point. And I mean, there are still remnants of that in this area. Farther out of the city you go, you'll find that. But, I think it's changing as well. Like you say, there is Southern hospitality here, and especially doing this podcast and like putting myself out there and meeting new people and stuff like that. Like,
right.
like if you have something to offer and you mean well by it, people are at least going to hear you out, and at least for the most part, there are people who will just look at you and keep walking, but there are plenty of I don't know. I had painted a picture on my community as like there's nothing here for me, and I mean literally like Killian Hicks changed my opinion on that, because like I meet this kid and he immediately just starts like supporting the hell out of me. Like literally had a 1 hour conversation with him, never spoke to him before then, and then like he's just showing me all this love and like putting me on to other people, and it's just it's turned my view of my community and the people around me around for sure, and continues to inspire me to meet new people and make new relationships and stuff like that. Like I said before this, I talking about growing up like different cultures and stuff. I always mess around with people like who are like homeschooled, and like there's been a couple people who I've met here recently who are like super cool and they're homeschooled, and I always mess with them like, wait, you're homeschooled? You actually have a personality. Like, that's crazy. And, I did go to public school, but like I told you, like, you're still able to, like, stay in your bubble there. Like, you may be, other cultures may be around you, but you're not necessarily, like, always mixed in and throwing around ideas. And, you may have the same classes and be forced to take biology lab together or whatever, but, like, you're not talking about things and learning about each other's cultures and where you come from and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I think that speaks to a lack of curiosity, and I try to really like get my students particularly to kind of start being curious, but that's really hard to teach. It's something that's really innate, that's like superhuman, to be curious about something.
Well, and that's where I think I've gotten a lot of my inspiration from here recently, is like I take that negative mindset that I had about the place and the people around me, and I just like force it into being curious and like learning, and I realize that that's the only way that I'm going to get better and the only way that I'm going to gain more experience in life. And life's like a networking opportunity constantly. I think about it that way, and especially like I started this and I was like maybe 6 or 8 weeks into it, and I was filming some motocross, and I met this man and he was curious about my camera, and he had like a really heavy British accent, and like we talked for like 10-15 minutes, and then I didn't say anything to him, and like that night I'm like laying in this camper bed, in this crappy bed, and I'm like, oh my God, I've missed a clear opportunity to like meet someone new who definitely has a story. Like clearly he has a heavy accent, he's at least has heritage somewhere else, whether he grew up around here or not. But just I don't know. That's just like a personal growth type thing for me here recently. I guess you seem to be like really attached to Bayou Life. And I was listening to you and Kendrick's podcast, and I found out that you were on the cover of Bayou Life at some point. And I guess that kind of leads into the, like what like inspires you for all of this stuff.
Can you see? Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah, and obviously you do some writing for them as well now. So if you could just kind of talk about how you got involved with all of that.
Well, Bayou Life kind of happened. It kind of fell on my lap in a way. I was visiting my friend Marina, who was living in London at the time, and she actually got emailed to write for Bayou Life, but she was living in London, so at the same time when I was visiting her, and I guess talking about what I wanted to do in the future, she's like, well, actually, Bayou Life messaged me. Maybe you should message them and tell them that you can do this job.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I hadn't published. I had nothing published at that point. I had one article that a friend of mine published in her blog, and that's my writing sample that I sent to Cassie. And I think that thanks to maybe a little bit of that, but maybe a lot of my colleague Meredith, who also writes for BayouLife, maybe like vouching for me that I'm not complete trash, and that she gave me an opportunity. And so I had my first article, or the interview, which and I have to credit BayouLife, and I think I said this in Kendrick's podcast as well. I have to credit BayouLife, well, for a zillion things, because the team is amazing, but with definitely exposing me to kind of like you said, like you were saying, what's there for me here.
Yeah.
that writing for BayouLife and interviewing so many like cool people from the area, in the area, mostly entrepreneurs and artists, really answered that question for me. And it was just so inspiring to like talk to these people and find out about their creative process, find out about the things that inspire them to be able to create. And that's really what I want to do, is just create in whatever form that takes. And obviously right now it's writing. So it has been thrilling to be able to talk to people. And, you know, I couldn't really imagine myself not doing that.
Yeah.
So keep me, Cassie, please. But I love the magazine, and I love their perspective and the direction that, you know, the team is taking it in. And there's always something to write about. Like, I write for... I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
Oh, no. Oh, oh my God. I don't even know what that alarm is for. I have so many alarms. And yet I never get anywhere in time. Sorry. Real life. This is life.
Facts.
But what was it? What was it?
Well, I'll just throw you out another question.
Okay.
So basically, you've recently written 2 articles on people that I know.
Oh, who?
And so I was just kind of wondering how you found them and how you chose to write about them. I know Caleb Wilt, Cold Canyons.
Cold Canyons.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And Matt Wall, Microgreens.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, I went to
cool.
high school with him, and I hadn't seen that guy in forever.
I had never seen that kid. I call him a kid, but he's... How old is he?
He's 27, 28.
I mean, he's kind of a kid. I'm 34. Okay, bye. Okay, so that's actually what I was just saying, and what I was about to say. So I have... My columns are the Bayou Eats, which is restaurants.
Okay.
And then Bayou Beats, which is the music.
Gotcha.
So I'm always looking for musicians or music groups that are local, that are writing original music or have been writing original music. And what I was going to say is I never run out of people to write about.
Yeah, for sure.
You would think that music, oh, there are just a few bands. No, there are like a lot of people doing some cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I like right now I have like a list of people that, you know, I'm just going to pick from for each month. Cold Canyons, so Andrew Bailey, who does photography for BayouLife as well, freelancing, great guy, and definitely check out his work. He suggested Cold Canyons to me. He's like, hey, have you heard of these guys? And I was like, no, I hadn't actually, because they're from Ruston. And I checked them out on Spotify, but I like to hear bands in person too.
For sure.
So then when I think they did the Railway Fest. I can't recall. I think they did Railway. Okay. So then I heard them there, and I'm like, okay, they definitely rock. And so that's how I introduced myself to them. I'm like, hey, I'd love to feature you guys.
Yeah.
So I featured them. Fantastic group. And then Matt Wall, that was my editor actually gave me that as an assignment.
Gotcha.
But I was like, microgreens. At first, I was like, use the wrong term. I said micrograins. I was like, what the heck is that? But he was fantastic. He like gave me some samples.
Nice.
And that was really a really cool article. Like
also,
his vision is amazing.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Last week's guest, Desi. So I talked to Desi. So the same.
I saw that.
I talked to him one day, like out there eating lunch, and he was like, "Yeah, about to be featured on Bayou Life," and I was like, "Oh, this stuff." I was like, "That's cool." And then I saw it posted, and I was like, "Oh, Van did it. All right, that's sweet."
Yeah, I mean, Desi. When I saw that you interviewed Desi, I was like, man, he must have given him a lot of material. Desi has stories, and he goes on and on. Like I think most of my interviews 30 45 minutes depending on what the content is. Man, Desi had me there for like an hour and a half, and I was just like, man, I can't use all of this. That'll be like super long.
For sure. No, it's funny because I had talked to him, and that was like that was a month or two ago, and I had reached out to him a couple different times, and we just weren't able to link up. He had gone on vacation, that kind of deal, and when I finally did reach out to him a couple weeks ago, he was like, we're speaking over Instagram Messenger, and so he was just like being super short, and I just was like, all right, well, we'll go for this. I don't know how this is gonna go, and then as soon as we got him fired up, he was going. I loved it though. It was exactly what I'm looking for, and we had a great time doing it.
Yeah,
so.
he's awesome, and you've eaten there, I'm sure.
Yeah,
like, it's so great. It's grown and grazed.
No doubt.
Fantastic.
Well, and like I kind of emphasized it, but I just love his whole vision for the whole place, and obviously Ruston is close to my heart, and food is as well. So pumped up about that.
And I love that the mayor is actually like promoting this. Like,
it's exciting times.
Important.
It is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which we could get into a whole nother discussion about, like like food and diet and gut biome and all kinds of crazy stuff.
I just got home I was in Puerto Rico visiting my mom, as you know, and I just rice and beans every day. Every day. And it was just like, okay, it's time to balance my diet.
So that's a great question. Like, what does Puerto Rico look like now compared to like how you spent a lot of time there previously to the hurricane and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, it's pretty. Most of the main areas are pretty like reconstructed after Maria.
Yeah. Like
my mom's hometown. Well, technically my hometown too. That's pretty, well taken care of now. But I think that there are some parts inland, more than the country areas, that have still, a long ways to go.
Yeah.
But the city, which is like the most popular place, San Juan, where everybody goes for vacation, mega tourist spot, that's, from my understanding, pretty like taken care of.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't really know that something happened.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Going back to the Bayou Life, how did you end up on the cover? Because I haven't seen it. I literally just heard about it.
I don't know if I have one here. I don't think so. I have 2 Bayou Lifes there. I don't have it with me, but man, that was Cassie, my editor, and the owner of the magazine. She wanted me to write a yoga feature, like exercise, come up with exercises, and then she's like, do you mind if you do the poses and we take pictures of the poses? I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's fine. And I guess like during the photo shoot, she said, well, I'm considering doing like maybe using one of your photos for the cover. But she didn't say that she was choosing it. She just said, I have a couple of options. We might do this.
Yeah.
Because it was the January issue is it's like the health and wellness issue. So they have already had like a girl doing a yoga pose before.
Gotcha.
So they try to like match the cover to whatever the theme is.
Right.
Sometimes, like not all the time. So I didn't really think that I was going to get chosen for the cover.
Yeah. That's not what you were seeking, I guess.
I really did. When she sent it to me, I was already in Puerto Rico for Christmas, and I was just like, oh my gosh. It was really, I really appreciated it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like that. I mean, it feels really good to like have somebody, I guess, validate you in that way. And I don't mean just like physically. I mean like that they admire, your work and what you do, and that's how I took it, and I was really grateful.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So is that something? I mean, like I see all these.
Is
modeling something that you're passionate about?
Not really. I love photography.
Okay.
So that's kind of...
Is that where this inspiration comes from?
Yeah. I think I Pinterested, office ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm just really have a chaotic mind. Like, my mind's a clusterfuck. And so that's what's on my walls.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how my mind works.
I wasn't looking at it from that perspective. And now that I am, I see what...
It's very much
why each one of these has grabs your attention.
It's an ode to photography, and it's an ode to aesthetic. So I'm really aesthetically driven, and so that that's what calls to my attention for what's like on the walls. But I mean, I have done modeling, but back home, but it was never like a pursuit. I'm just short and I like to eat, so.
Heard that. Same here.
Rebecca.
I'm gonna roast you for a second. You have a Greta Van Fleet album here. Do you like Greta Van Fleet, or is it just because
here it is? Here it goes. This is when the real wall comes up. Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
I've gotten shit for it. Asia and I don't know if she told you in your podcast, but Asia and I went to their concert in Atlanta.
Okay.
And on the way there, my car got totaled.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and my car got totaled in just like right in the west part of Arkansas.
Okay.
Wait, Arkansas?
No.
Where am I crossing? Alabama? Alabama.
Mississippi,
Wait,
Alabama?
no, Alabama. Ignore that. Geography. Okay. Alabama, and car got totaled. It wasn't my fault, thankfully. And I was so downtrodden. We were like an hour. Rebecca. Girl. This is going to be the most crazy. Hey, you asked for like chaos. Yeah. Here it is.
It's real. It's raw. We're not. This is life.
Don't even edit it. And so I was so downtrodden. We were an hour away from Atlanta, and I was just like, we can't make it.
Yeah.
Like we won't. What am I gonna do? And
y'all were okay, obviously.
We were okay, thankfully. And Asia's just like, this was in the midst of like, I'm looking at my car. The police are there. Everybody's just like, what do we do? And it just like looks at me. And she's like, Van, you don't have to say yes, but do you want to go to Greta? And I'm like, somewhere in my heart of hearts, I knew that I needed to.
Yeah.
It was just like we were too close, man. And say what you will about Led Zeppelin. They did put on a great show, and we got there like for at least an hour and a half worth of the show. And the Airbnb was fantastic. They worked with us. And then we enjoyed a great day in Atlanta, you know, the next day, and then we drove back in a rental. It just worked, and we kind of look at each other, we're like, man, we did that.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily even at that point, it wasn't even for Greta, it was just like for the journey.
Yeah,
and
it's an adventure.
It was, and finishing it.
Yeah.
And so that meant a lot to me, and that's the kind of friend she is for me. Shout out, Asia.
Yeah.
That she kind of just like pushes me when I knew that I should have gone to the concert, but I didn't want to say it, and she said it, so thank you, Asia.
Shout out, Asia.
Yep.
Yoga on Saturdays.
Yes.
Curly Park, 10 a.m.
Absolutely.
She'll be there tomorrow. This is going to come out. We'll upload tomorrow. So.
Is this going to be for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, can I plug that?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
So, wait, what time tomorrow, though?
At 5 a.m.
Okay. So, everybody should come out to Flying Tiger on Saturday.
Yeah.
So, not tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. This is going to come out on Friday.
Just
so
ignore me.
Mm-hmm.
No coffee yet. I haven't had my. What time is it?
I was about to say your 6 o'clock coffee.
I was like it's usually my 5 o'clock coffee.
Okay.
But yeah.
Fair enough.
So Saturday at Flying Tiger, we're doing. Josh Madden is coordinating and hosting the Woodstock tribute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be massively awesome. And if you love anything about, you know, that time period, and if you believe in, you know, the idea of peace, love, and all that jazz, definitely go to that. There are gonna be some amazing bands, and I might be on stage doing something. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Who knows what's gonna happen?
That's gonna be August 17th.
Yes.
2019. For the record.
So definitely go out there and support local artists. There's just gonna be more than just bands. Like they're gonna be Flower Crowns by Harley
Price, Studio. My cousin.
No, what?
Yeah.
Harley, you didn't even tell me.
Yeah, we need to make that connection, but yeah, for sure.
Has she not been on your show?
No, not yet.
Harley.
We'll make that happen for sure.
Up in here, girl. Well, she's doing like Flower Crowns. I think Asia's gonna do a mini yoga session.
Okay.
Bailey, she does a tie tie-dye queen,
Yeah,
Bailey.
yeah.
She did the t-shirt. She tie-dyed the t-shirts.
Yeah.
And then they got printed with the logo for Woodstock. I mean, it's going to be so much fun. So I'm really excited to be part of that. And shout out to Josh Madden, of course, because he's always doing so much everywhere.
All right, 2 more questions.
Okay, go.
What's your forearm tattoo?
Okay, here we go. So I don't know, upside down.
Yeah.
Okay. It is Hebrew, and it is I am that I am, and that is from Exodus 3:14, if my memory serves me right. And I did grow up Christian. My dad was so many denominations, so I just say my dad was Protestant.
Yeah.
And my mom's Catholic.
Gotcha.
And to me, that the idea of like, it's not so much like a Christian tattoo for me as much as it is kind of like a philosophical saying, because I just imagine the scene is Moses comes up to this burning bush and he's like, what's happening? And then it's God is like, I am God. And Moses is like, okay, well, people are acting crazy over there, so we need some help. And God's like, okay, go tell them this. And Moses is like, okay, but who should I say sent me? And he's like, tell them I am sent you, because I am that I am. And I could just imagine, like, if I was Moses, I'd be like, the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Just tell me who you are. But I like the concept. To me, my translation, and there are tons of translations, because that's what the Bible is for, is interpretation. There are different translations and there are different interpretations of the idea, but for me, it's really about being aware and understanding the present moment, because you can only be in the present moment.
Yeah, I could definitely see it as something like, you're like, all right, I'm me. Like,
that be me.
Yeah.
That be me.
I mean, it's just like, when I could definitely see that, like when you're in a time of self-doubt or somebody roasts you for something, you're like, you know what? I'm me.
It's kind of a way to like create some kind of affirmation of, in this moment, I am this. But that doesn't mean that you were that or that you will be that. It's just present moment living. Like, so that's my interpretation, and that's what it means to me.
I can respect that.
So come at me.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right. What do you see in the future for you? You plan on being here teaching? Is that something that you're still continue to be passionate about, or do you want to pursue journalism more, or modeling?
No, not modeling. Oh my gosh. It's just a loaded question for me right now, because I'm in this really weird space of life. But I also feel like I say that constantly.
Yeah,
so
no doubt.
Maybe my life is just like really interesting, I guess, for me. I don't know.
For me as well.
Okay, good. I have no bloody idea. I mean, I do still enjoy teaching. Every semester, I'm like, what do I do different? What can I improve on? And I'm still like thinking of things like that. The semester is going to start on Monday. I don't know what's happening. So good luck, students. I'm kidding. I know what I want to do. I just have to like structure it.
Yeah.
And then writing wise, I do want to continue expanding my music writing. That's what I'm the most interested in. At least expanding. Not to say that I don't want to write what I'm writing.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of you picking and singing.
Yeah. Okay. Not very well. You left something out there.
I'll say this. You got more confidence than I do.
That is the nicest way to put it. Okay, there's so many things. I'm going to get to that then.
Fair enough.
But I do, writing wise, that's what I want to do. So I'm trying to like think of, ways to pitch to other publications. And really just improving the craft. That's as much as I can really focus on, is how do I approach my writing now in different ways. Now that I've kind of gotten a flow to it, let's like be more creative with what I'm already writing.
Yeah.
So that, scouting obviously musicians, seeing what's out there, exposing myself to new genres, and like I'm just about to write about, this is my first metal article coming out in September.
All right.
It's going to be the band Weeping Hour.
Oh, yeah, for sure. New album.
Okay,
New album a couple months ago.
What happened in my mind is that some of the members used to be They Will Fall.
Right.
And the band that came to mind in my head was They Will Fall, but I knew my subconscious was like, bitch, that ain't it. It's
Shout out
one.
Derek Deutsch.
Not that one. And I was just like, well, give me the one that it is. And so they had to go look through the files in my head. And weeping hour. So I'm really excited about that because I've always wanted to do metal because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And hence, when you don't understand it.
Right here. That's what I'm talking about.
When you don't understand it, you seek it. You want to find out more. So I'm really excited about that one for that reason because I hadn't, explored the genre. So what is it? Teaching, writing. So I also have a short film coming out soon that I wrote it and then Josh Madden directed it and I had some of my friends act in it and I'm really stoked about that and that's definitely I want to do more of that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
All I'm going to say is I want to do so much more of that and there are a couple of things in the works but just nothing like immediate. So film is definitely on my to-do list. And then music.
Music. I want to play guitar.
I haven't told this story that I can remember. I did grow up in a musical household, but not necessarily instrument-wise.
Yeah.
The musician in the family is my brother, who used to play the trumpet, and so he's musically minded, and he'll tell you, man, you sound like shit. You're off key, bitch. You're flat as fuck. So thanks, little bro, for keeping it real. Like he'll try to harmonize with me. He's like, get like mad about it. But anyways, when I saw the movie Once Upon a Time in Mexico with Antonio Banderas, he does this finger pick of the song, the Spanish. Well, I don't know if it's Chicano. It's called Malagueña Salerosa. I can sing it. Okay. I can even play it, actually, to be honest. I can't finger pick it, though. But that was when I was in college, undergrad, and I was like, I want to play the guitar. That's so beautiful. Oh, my God. Spanish guitar. Amazing. And I did make my mom buy me a guitar, but there weren't any teachers that I knew I was in St. Croix at the time.
Yeah.
And so I never started it. And then it just fell into the backs of my mind. And then being exposed to so many musicians here as I'm interviewing them, I'm like, just do it for funsies.
Yeah.
And also I really like to challenge myself. I like to at least get intermediate at something. If I'm intermediate, I'm like, I clap at myself. Like I look in the mirror, I'm like,
good job, girl.
You did it. So if you go through my Instagram, one of my first guitar posts is me just strumming the worst way possible. Like I didn't know how to strum, so I was like, and I was like, I look so cute. And then Josh Madden, he's like, let me show you how to strum. And I was like, okay.
All right.
So then if you see the second video, it's the same song, but like not shitty and proper strum pattern. And so I've thought so many times of going to that first video and deleting it because it's like, it's so embarrassing. But it's like, no, it's real.
Document.
It's real. And, a lot of musicians that I've spoken to either have taught themselves guitar or their instrument, but also have taught themselves to sing. And to me, that's awesome. To me, that's just like that's discipline, and that is, like you said, confidence.
Well, and I think part of it is like you say, like having people like your brother around to be like, hey, that sucked.
No, but he's just an asshole.
Well, but I mean, I would imagine that he, like you say, he is a musician, so he has an ear for that kind of thing.
He does teach me, but he's just like one of those like dictatorial teachers, like,
yeah.
And I'm like,
I think that's the brother-sister relationship
no,
more than
really
anything.
Is. But people like Josh Madden, sometimes Josh Love, I'll ask them a question and they're like, okay, they'll sit with me but sometimes even Josh Love and I'm not Josh Love, sorry, the two Joshes, I feel like 5 Josh musicians in town. Sometimes Josh Madden and I will just get at it because I'm just so frustrated, and he is like a genius. So you too, Josh Love, you're a genius too. And I'm just like, don't get it. And I'm like, you need to slow that down.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to practice it for 5 days.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'll come back and it'll be good. It'll be fine. So I get really hard on myself, but it's part of my process. I need to. It's kind of like my driving force is when I get frustrated, it's like, you're going to get through this. So just do it. So, will I be playing guitar Saturday? I don't know.
Come find out.
Come find out.
Oh, sweet. It sounds like you're continuing to push yourself into new ventures, and I think a lot of that, like you said, kind of is your job almost, to go and find new things, and with your writing in Bayou Life, and know, it's like forced exposure to new things, I guess, as it's like almost not a choice sometimes. Like you say, like the whole microgreens thing, and like that stuff gets thrown at you, and you have to deal with it, regardless if it's cool or not.
There are some things I don't think are cool.
Yeah.
But I think that it's almost like a lesson in finding. I don't want to say finding the spin in it, but there's something in there. There's something in there.
Yeah.
That I can find as a writer, as a creative. There's something in there. So they say, I don't know if it feels true in the moment, but they say you are at your most creative when you are the most limited. So, and I could see how I've had to really shape a lot of articles. Really had to
fluff.
And I mean, in a way it is fluff, but it's even more than that sometimes. It's almost like it's like giving it a heart.
The amount of times that was written on papers that I wrote, like just like giant portions of things just circled and said fluff. Like, yeah.
Right. You ain't wrong.
I'm a marketing major.
Did it sound good? Did you like it?
Leave me alone. I'm not writing articles.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. But finding like the heart in something and knowing that you dug for it, that's an important part of the writing process. If you're writing articles, not journalism is different. It's like, you better be fact. You can't fluff it. You can't, alternative fact that.
Yeah.
So that's different type of writing. And I think like Kendrick asked me that, like, what's the difference? And, I write more like creative nonfiction with my pieces. It's still based on factual stuff, but it's presented in like a story format in a way. Trying to like put you in the moment, the reader in the moment of it, versus journalism.
Bring the reader into the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool.
Sweet. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this. I've kind of gone all over the place, but it's been a good ride.
I'm probably going to regret like 10 things that I've said.
So yeah, I guess do you want people to find you? Tell them where to find you if you want them to. If not, come to Flying Tiger on Saturday.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big social media presence.
That's fair.
I'm not trying to be an influencer.
Yeah. It's always debate on asking people that, like, you want to shout yourself out?
I mean, don't ever do what I do.
How about shout out whoever you want to? How about that?
Well,
shout out your friends.
I've shouted it out.
Yeah.
A good amount of people.
No doubt.
That I think that really are deserving of like your follow and your purchasing their product or their service.
At least consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And me, I mean, my Instagram, which is my name, so you can find me that way, there's no theme except for like my face.
Being proud of yourself. who you are.
Sometimes, because let me tell you, it can get pretty gnarly. As you've seen, like, God bless Dan for doing this.
It's been a good time so far. So
I appreciate that. Thank
all right.
you.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing and taking on some difficult topics and that kind of deal. So, yeah, I really hope that we can catch up later on down the line.
Yes.
And I hope you continue to pursue your dreams.
Me too.
All right. Peace, guys.
Ciao.